Hi, Yareli. So we obviously know each other already, right? But for those of the viewers who are watching this, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Anita Casavantes Bradford, and I'm an associate professor of history and Chicano Latino studies, and I am a first-generation college student and first woman in my family to finish high school. And why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Yareli Castro. I am a third-year political science and soon-to-be history double major. I'm also an undocumented student, so that adds on to the first generation college student.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being here. Just to kind of start things out, I want you to think back, whether it's to childhood or high school or whatever, and when was the moment when you first decided that you wanted to go to college?
I don't think I have like a moment in mind when I decided that I was gonna go to college. It was something that I've always just had in my mind, like I'm gonna go to college. Back in Mexico, both of my parents were going to be lawyers, but that didn't quite turn out just because we're from Sinaloa, so I guess the political spectrum and the political climate got a little bit too hectic. And so my mom couldn't really go to college and my dad didn't either. So it was when they decided to began migrating. So we started coming to the United States and things like that. So when I came here, it was just one of those things that I was like, oh, that's really exciting. The United States has a lot of really good universities. And so I was like, yes, I'm gonna go to college. But I think in high school, I went to a really small high school, and so there was about 500 of us in total. And so being an undocumented student, it was really hard for me because our counselor didn't really know what it meant to be undocumented. And so I had to really seek the resources, and I had to educate myself on a lot of the issues like financial aid, how do I apply for financial aid here, like in-state tuition and things like that. And so I'd spent so many of my years really learning all of this by myself that there was no way that I was not gonna go to college, just because I spent like 4 years learning about everything. And I did a research project in which I was finding the ways that I could incite other undocumented students to come to college. So I was like, I'm not gonna be very hypocritical and not go to college, but I'm telling you that you should go to college. And so it just became one of those things that there was no way I wasn't gonna go to college. And so I had really good grades and things like that, and hopefully I was able to come here, which is really exciting.
So you were dealing with not just being the first in your family to go to college, but you were also dealing with being an undocumented student at a time when laws in California were changing faster than the university system and the high school system could keep track of, right? So, I mean, we've talked with other students about how coming to university for them was like, kind of like entering a foreign country, right? You don't speak the language, you don't know the rules. That's kind of doubly true if you're an undocumented student, right? From your perspective, how is it different to be both undocumented and a first-gen student?
In college? I would say just because there's just not adequate training for faculty and staff. So I remember going to financial aid and I was just asking questions like, oh, have you received my California Dream Act and things like that? And they would ask like, oh, I'm not sure, let me go ask someone else, right? So people, when I would go ask, they didn't have the answers themselves, they had to ask, which showed to me that they weren't really trained and they didn't know how to really help us. And there was just like a lot of issues that we faced. There's like legal issues and mental issues and like health issues that for a lot of us, like we don't have insurance, so like what do we do? So it was nice coming here and just really getting insurance for the first time, right? While I see my parents and they struggle, like when they get sick, it's like one of those really stressful times because it's a lot of money. And my mom got sick for a while and she didn't have insurance, and that was like a really stressful time, not only like emotionally but financially. It was really stressful. And so coming here is just really hard, having to explain yourself like, oh, I'm undocumented and this is what it means to be undocumented and this is the extra help that I need from you. But for them not to be able to give you like concrete answers and to really tell you and guide you along the way because they don't know about your identity is really, really hard. And just the added stress of classes was just like on top of everything else. And really, And really also struggling with my identity was really tough. Like, oh, can I tell you? Can I trust you not to out me, right? And there was just a lot of things that came when I started telling people I'm undocumented. I know I didn't care, but there was a lot of people who that were not at that stage. So it was a little hard really dealing with both of those things.
Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with being the first in the family to go to college. You're dealing with being an undocumented student. You're dealing with being in a totally different place, family issues, all of this, right? And I think in a lot of ways that's probably common for many first-gen students, right? Documented or undocumented, all of these extra challenges. And yet you have succeeded and you are succeeding, right? Like I know you have a great GPA. And I know you spent the summer at a pre-law program, at the UCI Law School. You are succeeding. So what is the secret, right? What have you learned in your last couple of years here at UCI that has helped you and that might help other first-gen students to succeed?
Well, my first quarter was my worst quarter, I could say. And I didn't do too bad. I still made Dean's Honors List, but it was my first quarter. And I think that the toughest part was really getting the hang of the quarter system. It was really fast. I remember I started and it was already week 8, right? And I was just like, oh my God, where did all the time go?
That happens to professors too.
Yeah, and so it was really, really tough. And even now, I'm a peer academic advisor for the School of Social Sciences. And I noticed that, and there's like a big pattern. Like the people's first quarters are pretty much the worst quarters. Mm-hmm. And from what I learned is that I always needed to have someone in my classes that could help me. Mm-hmm. So I always took classes with my friends who were political science majors and things like that. And I did well because I had study groups. I couldn't study by myself. I couldn't catch up on reading by myself. Like I had to talk to someone because it was a lot easier just talking to someone about the content than just reading it and just paying attention in class. So all of the being in study groups, it was really supplemental and it really helped. Also, what I learned is that I really like my major, and there's people who do it because their parents told them or because they want to make money in the future. So it's not really something that they really truly want to do. And so I've noticed that if it's not something that they thought about themselves, like, yes, I want to be this major, they usually don't do good. And I've seen this pattern when I talk to students in the office. Like if I could tell like whether or not they want to do that major. And also I think it's hard because you need to have a really good background on everything that you do. So I know for like a lot of the econ majors, like if you don't have a good background in math, you're not gonna do good and that's gonna affect you. So what I've noticed is just like you need to make sure that you're doing what you want to do and what you love to do, and you'll do fine and you'll do a lot better than if you didn't.
Let's talk about that a bit, right? Because that resonates with me. Because when I was an undergrad, I was really interested in sociology. I was interested in development studies. I was interested in Latin American studies. And so I used all of my elective credits to study the things that I liked. But I had already decided for myself that I was going to get a degree in English and history because those were teachable subjects. I was going to get my teacher's credential and I was going to work, right? Like a lot of first-gen students from low-income households, you're thinking of college is what I do in order to get a job, right? So I didn't give myself the flexibility to just choose whatever major I wanted. Eventually it all worked out for me, right? I ended up exactly where I wanted to be, but 20 years later, right? What would you say to students who are legitimately concerned about, needing to get a job after college, and they do think about that when they choose their major, right? Yeah. What would you say to them?
Well, what I do tell students is that, like, yeah, you might do something that will prepare you to get a job, but you probably won't get a good GPA, and that's not gonna look very good on you, right? And that's probably not gonna allow you to get a good job. While on the other hand, you could do the major that you really, really want to do, and your GPA will reflect it, and you will do much better. So that's what I tell people. Honestly, you need to like weigh in what you want to do versus like getting a job, because it's honestly gonna look way better on your resume for you to have something that you love, right? Have a major. and for you to have like straight A's and B's and things like that. While you could be doing something that's not necessarily what you want to do, but you're doing it because you have to, and you're getting C's, right? So it's like one of those things that I tell people, think about it. Think about it, because like your future pretty much depends on it. Like, I know it's not set in stone, but it's pretty much like you're getting there, and you need to really think about what you're doing.
Yeah, passion makes people stand out, right?
Exactly.
So if your passion is literature or your passion is anthropology, and you can't clearly see how there's a job at the end of that, if you're passionate and you work hard, people notice that.
Yeah,
And
because
then
the opportunities come.
Right, they kind of do, don't they?
Yeah, especially here, you could do research in anything, and it doesn't really matter whether I'm doing political science and I'm doing research, and I'm doing research on something that I'm really interested about, and that's gonna show when I apply to a graduate program and things like that, right? Whereas I could be doing some other major, but I wasn't really interested in. How is that gonna help me in the long run?
So let's talk about grad school, because obviously first-gen students go to graduate school in lower numbers, right? Undocumented students go to university at all in very, very low numbers, right? And then graduate school,
It's like way lower.
there's just a few shining stars across the country that are blazing that pathway, right? So what are your plans for graduate school?
I've been debating this a lot, but hopefully I've been doing really well in my classes, and I've been just getting as much experience as I can. So I'm planning on hopefully doing a joint degree to get my my law degree and my PhD at the same time. I'm still like decided whether I wanted to be in political science or history, but I'm still like in the middle of it. But for the most part, that's really like the path that I want to take, just because I know that I want to practice immigration law, but I want to go back to my communities and to undocumented folks and just really teach them, because I feel that they don't get a good education from the very beginning, so that sets them back a lot. And so now when they're planning like in high school and things like that, they already don't have the good background to do really good and go on to college and go on into graduate school. So I want to start from there.
So what would you say to other first-gen students, documented and undocumented, here at UCI that think, well, graduate school is not for people like me, right? I can't afford graduate school. I don't know anyone who's ever been to graduate school. What would you say to them?
Like, I'm in the same situation as you are, but just because you think the future doesn't look bright, that doesn't mean that it's not. But you need to be reaching for it. You need to be working towards it. Some people think that everything is just gonna come to them, but you need to work really hard, especially if you're a first-generation college student. You have to work like twice or 3 times as hard, just because you're not gonna have the background knowledge. I know I can't ask my parents like, oh, how do I apply for grad school, because they're not gonna know. Oh, how does law school work? They're not gonna know. So it's like one of those things that you need to be like teaching yourself along the process, and really getting mentors too. I know I could ask you for anything, and I really wish that people really had that, right? Someone who's been there, who's gotten a PhD, law degree, and that we are able to ask for anything, right? And so I think that's one of those things that we need to be building the foundation for those first-generation college students that want to pursue graduate studies, but are scared. So I feel like that's one of those big things, that they're scared just because they don't know anyone who's done it. They're gonna stop there. But I mean, if everyone would have said that, then there would be no first-generation college students like yourself, right? Like going and getting a PhD. So I feel like we need to be like more, I don't know, we need to be like taking advantage of all of the opportunities. And especially here, we are a research institution, and I feel like people don't take advantage of that at times. But it's really easy to get involved, like, but obviously you need to seek like the mentors and faculty here.
So in practical terms, how do you do that, right? How do you, as a student who has just arrived at UCI, there's what, 30,000 students at UCI, and you're in a lecture hall, there's 200 students, there's one professor. How do you form a relationship with that faculty member? What do you do?
I feel like those are a little harder to get involved, but people don't take advantage of office hours. I go to office hours a lot, and there's no one there. So people think that faculty are just like, oh, strange, like I'm not gonna talk to them. They're very scary, but I mean, they're there for a reason. They want to mentor students and things like that. So really being like actively participating and getting to know your professors and asking questions, even when you don't understand minor things, like just go ask. Like there's no hurt in doing that. But also take advantage of upper division classes because they're a lot smaller. And I know in like Professor Rees, there's like 20 of us. So I'm gonna get to know her and she's gonna get to know me. So it's like one of those things that you can't be shy and you can't be afraid to ask questions and to engage with your faculty, because then you're not gonna get to know anyone.
So what if you are shy, right? Let's talk about the first gen student that is shy and that is afraid, right? What are 2 things that you would suggest that are like baby steps that they could do in their first quarter that will put them on the right path?
I would say the very first thing is just at least go introduce yourself, like, oh, I like your lecture, I like what you talked about today. And then even if you don't want to go straight to the professor, go to your teaching assistant. I feel like they could feel like they're a little bit more personable just because they are in college with you, you know? So it could be one of those like building blocks. Like go talk to someone and like slowly build up your courage to talk to your professors. But I mean, I feel like it's a lot easier for you to talk to your professors when there's no one there. So it's like one of those things that, like, find excuses too, you know?
Right.
Like, I remember I was like, oh, I don't understand that. I'm gonna go talk to them. So it's like one of those things that you need to be able to do, like just get out of your comfort zone. I remember I was like that freshman year, but that just went away because I allowed myself to take that step and be like, oh my God, I can't be afraid. I'm gonna need letters of recommendation. I'm gonna need, you know, people who talk, who could say good things about me.
Right. Right. You don't want to be in your 4th year thinking, okay, now I'm going to apply to graduate school, or now I'm applying to Teach for America, or now I'm applying for my first job, and I don't have any relationships with the professors, so I don't have anybody to ask for recommendation letters, right? Like you want to build that relationship starting from year 1 or year 2, right? So that when you ask that professor for a recommendation, they can write a real letter. They can say, I've known Yareli for 3 years, right? So let's brainstorm together. Let's think back to the first quarter, right? That difficult first quarter where everyone feels like, what am I doing here, right? Let's brainstorm a list of 5 or 6 things that you can do in that first quarter to succeed. Okay, so I'm going to start with have all of your books on the first day of class, right? So that's kind of one of my pet peeves as a professor. I send out emails 2 weeks before the quarter starts asking people to just get their books because the quarter is so fast, right? If you don't have the books and you don't start reading, you're going to be in trouble, right? So get your books. What's something else they can do to succeed?
One thing that I've seen and I didn't do, but take only 12 units.
Right.
Take the minimum, just because I took 20.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my God. But I did well. So I was like, oh, thank God.
Right.
But I look back on it and I was like, I should have only taken
Just
3 classes.
ease in, right?
Just because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for you to get the hang of it when you only have 3 classes and you're doing, just lower division classes, really getting into your major and really realizing whether you like it or not. And so it's one of the things that I tell people now, like take 12 units only.
That's
Because
excellent
people
advice.
think that they could handle everything. Oh, I took this many AP classes in high school and I took this many classes, but it's not the same. It's really not the same.
Right. So another thing, expect to work, in my opinion, expect to work a 40 to 50 hour week, right? Like just because you're only in classes for 12 hours a week, most of your time should be spent on studying, reading, do the reading, right? What else? What's one more thing?
One more thing, get to know people in your class and make study groups. I remember the very first person that I talked to, still my friend, but he helped me out a lot and we did really well in the political science class. And it was because, let's say I didn't understand something, I would just call him and be like, oh, can you come help me? Can we study together? And it was a lot easier because there was a lot of reading too for that class, and I was just like, oh, I don't think I could do it. And he's like, okay, I'll read a little bit, you read a little bit, and we'll just talk about it in depth, and then we'll make flashcards and study guides and things like that. and it all just worked out fine. But people sometimes are afraid to talk to their peers, and I'm like, oh my God, if you can't talk to your peers, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to talk to other people. And it just becomes a lot easier, you know, it's like two working together.
Right, right. Okay, so final words of encouragement for first-gen students, documented and undocumented at UCI.
Seek the resources and seek your faculty and staff. I know there's a lot of faculty that are always just there to help you, like you and Dr. Reese has been really helpful, and just for them to talk to you and ask for advice when you don't understand anything. Don't hesitate to ask questions. I feel like people feel like, oh, like I'm dumb. But no, I'm sure someone else has the same question as you. So don't hesitate to ask questions. And yes, keep up with your readings, because that's like the toughest thing for me sometimes. So I'm like, oh, I can't read anymore. But yeah, definitely. And they're not alone. There's a lot of us here at UCI. People think like, oh, I'm the only one and I can't talk to my parents about it, but there's a lot of us. Like, seek us out. I'm sure there's like a person sitting next to you might be a first-generation college student. And I've noticed that a lot because my professors have been starting to ask, like, who's a first-generation college student? And it was the whole class. And so, you know, they're not alone, and they could seek us out anytime.
That's right, 60% of us. 60% of the undergraduate population here is first gen.
It's a lot.
So, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you.